Okay, welcome to the first episode of Stolen from the Shop. Today we have a Rolex Explorer II, the Polar, a 16570. Let's get busy with it.
Boom, watch fam.
Okay, so like I said, well, actually, real quick, what is up, Watch Fam? My name is Michael. I am not the curator of the Theo and Harris Watch Shop. That is Christian, but we do have the Theo and Harris Watch Shop where you can actually find this exact watch on there, although it may be sold. If it is, or if you're still looking for it, email info@theoandharris.com, and I bet Christian or Jen could hook you TF up. So check that out right away and see what you think. But also, we have a leather goods shop, so we're going to give away a strap on this video to the best comment. The best comment can be about a series that we can do, video topic ideas, not because we're running out, just because, one, I think you can come up with some pretty funny ideas. Like I said, they don't need to be legitimate ideas. And two, I figured it'd be fun. Obviously, liquor run's a big one. So anyways, best comment of that gets a strap. Another giveaway that we're doing is when we hit 100,000 subscribers, we're giving away a Rolex Datejust. So subscribe to this channel if you want to double your chances. You can follow Christian's Instagram right there. You can also follow my Instagram. It won't do anything extra, but it's still fun to follow. And you can follow my YouTube, The Iron Snail, and things will be great. Okay, anyways, on to Stolen from the Shop. Today, we are looking at a Rolex 16570, and this specific watch, not the model, the watch that I have right here clenched in my hands is what I would put on my wrist, but it's too big for my wrist. And also, I feel like if someone's going to buy this watch, they don't want to see me slamming it against the table for 10 minutes talking about how, unscuffed it is. Anyways, real quick though, about this watch in particular, what's really nice about this watch is that it's basically untouched. And by basically I mean it's untouched. There's not a single scratch on this. It's about as new as you can get for a Rolex 16570. Incredible condition. The lume is great. The radial brushing on the bezel is perfect. It looks great. Everything is super sharp. If you're looking for a Polar 16570, this is kind of the one to go for. Okay, so that's the specific watch. This model in general, though, it is water resistant to 100 meters, which I think most Rolexes still are today, besides like the Submariner and the Sea Dweller and all that. But 100 meters, 40 millimeters wide. This is a great size. It can go basically on anyone's wrist. I like 38 and 39. 40's fine, but 38 and 39 is my perfect spot. 12.2 millimeters thick, 47 millimeters lug to lug with a lug width of 20 millimeters. Boom. Okay, so what's interesting about the Rolex Explorer II is that you have the Submariner, and you could see the Rolex marketing team, and just Rolex in general, they're like, okay, we need a tool watch for divers. This is a tough professional career or leisurely activity. It's cool. People are swimming with sharks. Awesome. Incredible. We need the Daytona because people are racing cars and doing all this crazy stuff. Super cool. What about the caving market? How are we going to conquer the caving market? And what I mean by that is basically this watch was kind of intended for spelunkers. So, people that go caving and professional spelunkers. I'm going to take the position of a young spelunker in the years 1989 through 2011. I'm not really sure particularly where I'm from, but anyways, that's me. That's who I am for this video. I love caves. Stalagmites, don't get me started on those. And the original model was really kind of set on spelunkers, and not spelunkers in general, but I'll get into what I mean by that in a second. This is often dubbed, or the Explorer II is dubbed the McQueen watch, which I looked into that and basically found out, and I'll read the quote in a second, it's just false. It's just not true. And everybody was just like, oh, well, okay, well, I already said it, so. But yeah, there's no reports of Steve McQueen wearing this watch at all. To quote it exactly, indeed, it is believed that the McQueen Explorer myth stems from a simple misunderstanding. Most likely somebody saw one of the many publicity shots of McQueen wearing a Rolex watch, mistakenly identified it as an Explorer II, and the report of McQueen wearing one gradually became an accepted truth. That's incredible. I'm going to start a rumor about myself pretty soon. So, like I said, I'm a spelunker. I'm trying to think about what I'm going to bring. I'm like, okay, I need a good helmet, a good headlamp, 2 to 3 backup flashlights, a coverall or caving suit, protective gear, knee pads, elbow pads, gloves, the right underwear, and good caving boots. Oh, and I need a watch. So I would like one with good visibility, one that has the capability to tell me 24-hour time, but not exclusively. And I really like Steve McQueen, so if he had a watch like that, that'd be great. So the first Explorer II that we have is the 1655. That was released in 1971 and ran until 1985. The lume's really important on this because it's a caving watch, so obviously you're in the dark all the time. Obviously, lume doesn't last forever. It lasts a really long time, but I would picture that a caver would have the watch on, have a headlamp, and they would, just kind of charge it like this, have lume for a few hours so they would know what time it is and go from there. 1971 through 1985, on the 1655, they used tritium lume, which is not radium lume, which I want to do a video on radium lume in general, just because that was extremely radioactive, and there's the radium girls and all that stuff, all these people getting deformed from painting the watches and stuff like that. So I really want to do a video on that, but the 1655 used tritium, which is really good because it was safe to the wearer, but also safe to the manufacturers, so that's pretty cool. So the big thing that made the 1655 super important is the fact that it had an extra hour hand that told 24-hour time. So the bezel you see on the Explorer II is not a rotating bezel, it's a fixed bezel with 24-hour markers around there, and then you would have the red hand that faded to orange over time, tick around for 24 hours. So that way you could easily distinguish if it was day or night. The important thing about the 1655 though, and what made it kind of a niche market, was that the second hour's hand was dependent on the primary hour's hand. So if you moved one hour's hand, the other one moved. They were locked like that, which means it was always destined to be just a 24-hour time watch. You couldn't make it a dual time or anything like that because the hands moved together. So that was that. That was the lume. That was the hour's hand. What's also cool about the 1655 is what we typically see is lume on the 5-minute markers. So, every 5 minutes, the 12, the 1, the 2, the 3, so on and so forth. That's lume. So obviously you look at your watch and you can see all the hour indices lit up. Now that's for 12 hours. So what the 1655 did to compensate for that was they loomed every 2.5 minutes, which then you have 24 lume points around the dial, and it's easier to tell what hour it is specifically when you're telling 24-hour time. The last things that you should note before we get on to the 16550 is that the dial on the 1655 is black and the indices are all rectangular. So that's a difference to look into. When we shift into the 16550, which ran from 1985 to 1989, Rolex was like, okay, this is what we want. This is the final kind of version of the Explorer II. We have the design, but when they made the 16550, there were a few little defects and stuff like that that they ended up kind of patching up and fixing. The first thing, or maybe the first thing you'll notice, I don't know where you're going to notice first, but one of the biggest things and what's really famous to the Explorer II is that the hands are not just regular stick hands. Now there's the famous Mercedes hand, so you'll see it on the hour's hand. That's to increase visibility on the hour's hand, especially because there's more lume, and you can differentiate it easier between the hours and the minutes hand. The case of the 16550 also bumped up a millimeter, so now we have the kind of modern day case size, modern day being till 2011. We'll get to the last model in a second, but they also changed the mineral glass on the front of the watch to sapphire glass, so now you can't scratch it even if you tried, which I'm assuming if you're in caves, that's great. You were like, oh, thank God, because all the bats in the caves were biting my watch. It was horrible. They were scratching it mercilessly. Thank God for sapphire. Another really important thing, which you'll probably notice, is that now you can get the Rolex Explorer II in black or white dials. So that was a really big thing and really close to seeing kind of the famous Polar, which I did read that the Polar was kind of introduced towards the end of the 16550. There were some 16550s that didn't use the white gold around the indices. They had the black outlines instead. I don't know specifically if that's true, but I'm going to say it got introduced in the 16570 just because that's kind of a more concrete statement, but there may have been some. So we have all those updates that makes the Explorer II now, but what's really important is that we see kind of a shift in design. I always thought a white dial would be easier to read in a cave. I'm not sure why Rolex originally did a black dial. Maybe more contrast between the lume and the dial. I'm not quite sure, but we're shaping up to see kind of the modern Explorer II that we know today. What's really important though on the 16550 is on the inside, we had a movement that was different than the 1655. Obviously, it was different than the 1655, but what was really important with the caliber 3085 was now that secondary hour hand was no longer dependent on the primary hour hand, so you had a dual time watch, which opens up the floodgates to people with long distance girlfriends, to people that travel a lot, people that want to know what time it is somewhere else at the same. Really, it just broadened the market a ton. Now, like I said, though, the 16550 only lasted for 4 years. It was a transitional model. I think it was for myriad reasons. One of the biggest ones being, which now they're worth a lot of money, but one of the biggest ones being is that Rolex made a mistake and the white dials turned cream. So the 16550 creams are worth a lot of money because it's like when the US Mint makes a mistake and they put like President Long Long on a penny or something like that, and people are like, oh my god, that penny's worth $20,000. Kind of the same thing here. I'm only assuming it was because of that. Okay, so that's the 16550. Now we're on to the point where we talk about the 16570. There's not a ton to say about it because Rolex basically took the 16550 and perfected it. In my opinion, perfected it, but you know, whatever. So it ran for 22 years. It came out in 1989, ran till 2011, and I wouldn't be upset if they kept it running, but they didn't. We'll get into that in a second. But we see the lume actually shifted 3 times here. So we had tritium lume, then luminova, then super luminova. So this watch just got brighter and brighter and brighter in the dark to the point where, you know, the cavers were just walking around using their watch as a flashlight. 1989 through 2011 was really just an incredible time for spelunkers everywhere. But here we have an updated movement using the caliber 31 to 85. That basically is perfecting the 3085. The independent hours hand is still independent. Still a hacking seconds hand, still a quick set date. It's just the perfected version of the 16550, except this is the official introduction of the polar dial. So now there are always black outlines around the hour indices. That's obviously to increase legibility. You're adding more contrast to the dial, so that helps a lot. But this is the official introduction. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Poe. L to the AR. Christian's gonna make fun of me for that. I may have to cut it. So that's the 16570. We see a lot of kind of minimal upgrades through the Rolex Explorer II 16570's life. Nothing really crazy, just kind of keeping it up with the times at this point. No design changes until a very sad day in 2011 where Rolex said, hey, let's introduce the 216570, which, again, if you have that watch, it's an incredible watch. It's a beautiful watch. I'm just joking around here, but I don't like that watch as much as the 16570. The case got bigger. It's chromolite lume, which is great, but it has a 42 millimeter case. But anyways, that is stolen from the shop. This is the 16570. Have I said that to you at all? I can't remember. Great watch. Again, if you're interested, email info@theoandharris.com or check on the Theo and Harris website. Again, just great job today, everyone. Great job. I'll see you in the next one, which I'm actually going to film right now. So catch me in the sweatshirt next video.